closely.
Good morning. Everybody full pancakes? So, I saw the cars out here and I thought, wow, I told my daughter that there's a big crowd here to see what we're going to do this morning. And she said, Dad, they all came to eat pancakes.
Need that turned up?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Good morning, and welcome to our Grand Marshals of the Parade, Teresa and Deli Doll up here in the front table. Let's hear it for you. You guys have that princess wave down really well. I'm here to introduce my father, who at 88 years old wants to share his collection of historical photos and oral history. In order to accomplish that, he's starting today sharing this information with you about the early Rochester years. These pictures date back to the early 1900s, and they include the three locations of the town center. The first location was right in this area where Sweet Hall is. The second location of the town center was over in the Pole Yard area. And the third location is where the current town center is now. In order to make these photos and information available, the Rochester Chamber of Commerce has developed a historical archive project which will be opening at the School District Admin Building in the summer of 2025. If you have interest in participating in that, please reach out to me. I'm Donna Weaver, and you can find me, or Diane, or whoever, or the chamber. My dad is the third generation, descended from the Carper family, and if you notice, at the high school, there's a road named Carper. The Carper Road is going through what once was the Carper strawberry fields and homes. And he also descends from the Ray family out of Porter. So he's third generation, and our family at this point in time has a total of 5 generations here, 4 of which are living, which is a little bit fun. All right, I'll turn it over to my father, Gene Weaver, and please give him a hand. This is going to be interactive, so please, at any time you have a question, speak up. Just holler out and say what your question is. Isa, you have a question.
Is this about train tracks or about history?
This is about both. I'd like to point out that Isa is one of the 5th generation. So she usually talks a lot and asks a lot of questions. So anyone with questions, please stop. Don't hesitate. Feel free to look at the pictures up here during the event. Don't feel you have to sit in place the whole time. All right, let's give Gene Weaver a hand.
Thank you, thank you. Well, as Donna said, we're going to do this in the format of a discussion and not election. So, sure.
So on your tables over here with pictures, if you recognize someone in the picture, please write their name down and put a sticky note on it. There's sticky notes and pens on the tables. And feel free, if you know a bit of history that we're not covering, weigh in. So, like Dad said, it's interactive.
Yeah, it's perfectly all right, except for Kathy Hengardner.
She's not here to defend herself.
Anyway, I've been collecting these pictures and history things for over 50 years, cramming them in fireproof file cabinets and things. It's time we really need to corral this stuff before some air comes along and dumps it in the dumpster like has already happened to some of our people in town, and it's a shame to lose all the records and our history, because we don't pay attention to our history. We're probably going to repeat it, some of the bad stuff. So, with that, I'd like to acknowledge David James's. David was one of the descendants of the James family, who were one of the, I guess, the first people to settle here. And he very graciously allowed me to copy all the slides that he used on the program. Well, I attended one of these programs right here in this building. And David's been gone for a while. But it's really good, because I got all these photos. A lot of these photos today, about half of them came from David James, and the rest of them came from pictures I've collected over the years. So anyway, I'd like to also thank George Sharp, who's sitting in front of me here. And George is doing a wonderful job of promoting our community and the chamber, and has frankly conned me into doing this. And also a couple of my daughters that have worked countless hours putting the slide projection together, and it's I think they did a pretty good job. We'll see as we go through it here. So don't forget, if you got a question, you got a comment or anything, just weigh in as we go through here. Some of the slides are self-explanatory. Others I have some stories to tell about, but it should be quite interesting, I think, I hope. I need to make a disclaimer before we go on, that regardless of the rumors that have been circulating around and probably started by my kids, that I was not campaigning and voting for Abe Lincoln. And I did not take these 1910 photos myself. However, I have quite a distinction. Isa, what do you need?
On that side.
Did Milwaukee Railroad own all that land? Is what she's asking.
Well, the Milwaukee Railroad, before it was abandoned, had the right-of-way all the way from here to Little Rock. So, anyway, I probably have a distinction of being one of the few people living that was actually born in Rochester, right over on 180th Street across from the pole yard in my grandmother's house. And so I've never been able to get away. But it's been a really great place to live. And I think you'll agree with me that it's probably one of the best places in the nation. Little towns are great in today's world. So, on we go to the Milwaukee Railroad line in Rochester's 3 locations. Rochester started and was actually platted in October 4th of 1890. And Grand Mound and Gate had founding fathers, and Rochester had a founding mother by the name of Julia Fleming, who happened to own a large tract of land right along the railroad when it came through. The Union Pacific came through, which was the first railroad. So there's rumors that the name of Rochester at one point was Moscow, but near as I can find out, that's just a rumor. There's no record of any Moscow being platted. So Julia actually came from, let's see, I think she came from back east, Indiana. And there's a Rochester, Indiana, so she named the town that she platted Rochester after Rochester, Indiana. So, thanks to David James again, these sketches that we've got really help answer a lot of questions as to where certain buildings were at, the railroad depots and different things. And the area of town, Donna, have you got the pointer? The first area of town was down here by Sweet Hall, just west and south of Sweet Hall a little bit. Second, when the railroad came through, when the MP came through, the town moved up by where the pole yard is at now. And then when the Milwaukee Road came across that showed there, they moved the depot down there, or built another depot down there, and the town gradually came back to where you can see it today. So we've labeled these East District, Central, South District. And this is another one of David's sketches, which really helps locate some of the pictures of buildings we've got today. This is a view of the town from the hill back to the south. And I'm guessing about 1910.
Is that, what hill is that you're looking at?
But
What hill?
Roseburg.
Roseburg.
Roseburg Hill.
Yeah.
Is that Michigan Hill? No, Roseburg.
Yeah, we used to call it Betts's Hill because Betts lived up there.
Tell them about where we are, where the diner is, and where this house was right behind the diner.
The Llewellyn house was actually, let's see, she was my grandfather's sister. And they had the big house that was, if you know where the carport is at, behind the diner down here, behind the Miller building, the front of the house was about where that carport is at down there. It burned, I think, as far as I know, in the 50s. But it was a early stopping point for people traveling through, and it was a boarding house, actually. My mother actually worked there for Aunt Laura, and was actually scared to death of Aunt Laura because she was a very stern woman, and between she and her mother, they were noted for being Mrs. Methodist of Rochester, and they were very strict, and my mother didn't particularly care for working there because Aunt Laura was pretty strict. Okay, moving on. Here's Peyton store and a livery stable. It was a couple of the first buildings. And it shows, you can see up there where Sweet Hall, where we sit today. And it was west, almost due west of the Sweet. And then this is a street scene from that early day.
So that's Peyton's store right
That's we believe that is probably a picture of the first Peyton store. And looking west down the street toward the Milwaukee Railroad line on the South District. Then we've got the East District, which is over by the pole yard. This is either Gresham Street or one block, we're not sure whether it's Gresham Street or one block further east. And there was quite a development there with, there was an opera house there, and there was a cafe and hotel and livery stable. And it was quite a little development at that location. There was actually a crossing of the railroad there, and some of the buildings across the railroad track. So, this is, I believe, the first depot that was up by the pole yard along the NP road. And it lasted until the Milwaukee Road came through, and then they moved. They built a new depot by Little Rock. That was right where the tracks crossed. This is a picture of the Opera House, where the Rochester band played, and they showed early movies there. And it was quite a popular place. And this is another sketch of the Central District.
that shows the schools.
I think this sketch is a little off where the depot shows up in the upper left-hand corner. Yeah, and I think that was it was on the east side of the tracks, not on the west side. It was still there when I was in high school, and it was actually moved down across the street from Freddie Neal's place, and it turned into a rental in the early 60s.
So this is the school administration building.
Across from the Neal House,
What?
is that still there?
That building is still there.
Maybe clarify too that not everybody knows where the Neals live.
185th,
184th.
184.
I worked with a fellow by the name of Lloyd Dewey at the plywood mill in the early 60s, and they evidently put the old building because of the depot or the maintenance shed or whatever it was abandoned as I recall, when I was in high school, but they must have put it up for auction because in the early 60s, Lloyd Dewey bought it and moved it down and turned it into a little rental house.
So if you want to locate this on the screen, Donna, showing where the school administration building is. That was a grade school and a high school.
That's right there by the stoplight now, and you'll see that the highway doesn't go across the tracks yet in this sketch. It was later on. The house you see right in the southwest corner of that intersection was actually sitting in the middle of the highway right away, people might remember when that house sat there. That house was then eventually moved out on the farm. Out on what road is it? Out, yeah, west of town, out by the farm out there. No, it's out by the tapio place. It's still there. It looked more like a house than a depot, like the depots that are depicted in some of these pictures here. This is another central district showing the schools and the Atwood Garage.
And the bandstand.
And the bandstand there, in my thoughts, was moved over to the Llewellyn Grove and over between the Miller building now and what we call the drugstore back in the 50s. It sat in Llewellyn Park and was used there, so I don't know whether it was moved there because it's very plain in these pictures here. It's not in the location that over by the high school that later was, so I'm not sure if it was moved there or they built another one just like it there. This is a grade school and the high school, and facing Highway 12, right about where the administration building is now, the old elementary school is at, and the administration building now. This is looking down Albany from the Township Road, which is now Highway 12. This is the Woodworkers of America Hall, and that sat between the old post office and the red and white store that later was Hillis. This store here was Hillis's hardware and egg processing plant when I was in high school and for several years after. It's now the JMJ Auto Lot. This is a picture, and I'm not sure if this was in Bordeaux.
There was a blacksmith shop in Rochester.
Yeah, there was a blacksmith shop in Rochester, but this is not it. To my knowledge, my grandfather, that picture is my grandfather and his brother. And my grandfather and his brother both worked in Bordeaux. And they came also, I think, had a blacksmith shop early on down in Porter. So I don't know exactly where this picture was taken, but sure is a neat picture of a blacksmith shop. Okay, the Matson Mercantile. You know, the Broken Wheel Tavern that's been closed for several years, that was the location approximately of this Matson Mercantile.
So interestingly, look closely at the right bay there.
Yeah, take a look at that right bay there. By blowing the picture up, it says Stickland's undertaking parlor. So I didn't know until a few days ago that we, were that uptown and had an undertaking parlor in the middle of town. And my son saw the scales there and he thought maybe it doubled as a cold storage. Okay. The turn of the century, 1910 and area, Rochester was promoted widely, I guess throughout the United States. Big ads in the Seattle paper, and there's over on this table over here to the west are copies of some of the promotional brochures that went out, and they advertised Rochester as being ideal climate for a long life. Strawberries you could raise out here as big as apples. And there was one promoter that from that era would drive people around the prairie and try to sell them 100-foot lots, 25 by 100-foot lots, and they would remark, this ground is just really, great big boulders and rocks all over. And he said, yeah, they import those rocks to keep the soil warm. The sun warms the rocks and it makes the strawberries grow so good. So that's quite a bit of interesting promotion went on. Until a few years ago, I think most of them have been bought up and combined. They now, but all of these platted lots out on the prairie, you'd find a lot here that owned somebody owned from New York, and another one from Texas, and all over the United States. And they would be just, I guess, bought for investment. And I don't know whether they ever saw the lots or not, but most of them have been bought up by real estate developers and houses on them now. They combined into larger tracts. Can everybody hear all right?
Yes.
Okay.
Loud here.
Okay, this is a story of the Hunt Great and the Northern Pacific coming through. No, Milwaukee. Excuse me. Milwaukee and the Hunt companies. They were in a race to put the rails to the coast, and they, for years and years, I guess you can still see parts of the old Hunt Grade went right through Rochester, and they were in a mad dash to get to the coast, and when they got to the bluffs down in Elma, there was only room for one railroad between the river and the bluff, and UP made it first, and the Hunt people folded right after that because they couldn't get their rail lines down past the bluffs in Elma. But the grade through Rochester, I guess you can still see it in several places, right through the middle of town here. This is an interesting picture of early road grading and street grading with horses. And this is Peyton's store in the background there. This is a little more modern. The tractor towing road building equipment, probably when they were building the highway through to Oakville. 1945 or 46, the corner burned. Started in the pool hall down the street, about across. There was the corner store that is burning here in the picture. Then there was a pool hall, a service station. You can still see the concrete pad behind the mercantile store down here now of the service station, and a pool hall. And the pool hall got, they determined, I guess, that the pool hall was where the fire started, but it burned the whole corner. And that caused the town to get together, and my father and quite a few of the town business people started the fire district at that time and bought the pumper. I think it was I think the pumper was a 1950, Chevrolet, carried 500 gallons of water. Well, yeah, it was interesting. I remember this very vividly, the fire, because up on the hill there used to be a white house. The water tower hill here behind us. And there was a rip-roaring party going on up there, and my folks were there, and my brother and I were little kids at the time. And there was a bunch of kids there, and we were outside playing, and we saw the smoke when this fire started, and didn't pay that much attention to it. Just thought somebody was burning garbage down. It ended up, and so the store had a bunch of ammunition that they sold, and of course, everybody bailed out of the house when we started yelling about the fire. And my dad and a couple of World War II vets that had just come home from the Pacific were there, and there was a little alcohol involved. And so a bunch of them jumped in the car to go downtown and see all the action. And my brother and I had managed to squeeze in too. Pulled right against the blank wall of this building on the west side, and we were sitting there, and all of a sudden the ammunition in the store started going off, just blowing. And one of the vets was bound and determined. He jumped out of the car and was going to go in and save his buddies. He was pretty inebriated. And my dad and the guy's brother managed to grab him and get him back in the car, and we got out of there. Okay, here's again the Rochester grade school and the high school, which was later turned into the Methodist Church. I think it was actually moved across the street and became the Methodist Church, which again burned in 1969, I think it was. My wife can answer that. When was it, Janet? 69, I think.
Yeah, it was in the 60s, but I can't give you the exact name.
Here's a modern transportation picture. Probably one of the first school buses drawn by horses. And another one in the grade school with the students. These are 1910 pictures of the high school and intermediate and primary school classes that some of you may have been in. And here's the baseball team, which was called the Berry Pickers, the first team they had. Donna, when did they change to the Warriors? Do you remember?
I don't have it on the top of my head.
We looked it up here a while back, and at some point they changed from the Berry Pickers to the Warriors. This is a Grand Mound school that actually is over across the street from the Great Wolf Lodge. And you can see a modern picture of it. It's just taken with the lodge and with the Great Wolf showing up back behind it. Interesting little story there in the Grand Mound School. You see those trees there. I don't know if they're cherry trees or something. And just to the left in the picture, there's another tree